I remember a couple months ago being excited by the way analog horror was going on YouTube, as we seemed to be in a period of greatness within the genre, and it only seemed to be getting better and better with time, unlike most versions of YouTube horror. And it almost seemed like the genre could do no wrong, as almost every single thing being released at that time was just pushing things forward even more than the last. From the Backrooms, to the Walton Files, then to the Mandela Catalog and Greylock, and then finally the Oldest View and The Man in the Suit. It seemed like almost everything in the genre was made for a certain person with bountiful fresh ideas that were just creative and allowed your mind to wander. And there was just so many creative and new ideas that the genre was just game changing at the point. There was just so much creativity going on that allowed you to have a horror fix within YouTube. But like everything else before it, the quality began to rapidly decline, and I think I saw this firsthand with Urban Spook series. The Painter follows a police investigation into the murders caused by two men who brutalized many people in their path as they try to kill everyone they spot along the way, and with every body they find, they would find a painting along with it. And this would be the main draw of the series, as the paintings were what people were coming to see. The story itself was more secondhand. But oh boy, is there really something to talk about when it comes to the story of Urban Spook series. I've grown up watching horror films and reading creepypastas. I've seen some of the most gritty and darkest films known to man. Trust me when I say that most things don't gross me out anymore, as I've gotten to the point that almost nothing is shocking to me anymore from a film perspective. With one caveat, which is of course that is only purely for shock value and nothing else. Many films do stuff purely for shock value, and at a certain point when it's just shock value, it won't stick with you as long. And for shock value to be done correctly, it has to be done in a context that makes sense. First, never glorify the violence. If you glorify the violence, it's no longer shocking. You're just being gross for the sake of being gross, and that to me automatically makes the film I'm watching uninteresting and not worth watching. And the horror has to be somewhat believable, and if it's too over the top, it will completely drag me out of the story and make me uninterested in what I'm seeing. One of my favorite examples of a film that does shock value perfect is, I think, Goodnight Mommy from 2014. While what they are doing to her in the film is awful and terrible things that are shocking to the viewer, it won't stick with you as long without the context surrounding the film. And the context surrounding the film, with it being her own children doing this to her, makes the film much more shocking and will stick with you longer than if it was just some random people doing it to her. And the violence itself in the film is not too over the top, so while it is very shocking to see, it won't take you out of it by being too unrealistic, because you can believe what you're seeing. Urban Spook, however, did the complete opposite of this by making it so that every single act of violence in it was so extreme and over the top, while making the killers out to be uncatchable godlike villains that are able to do things that almost no human would be able to understand. And it doesn't help that the context surrounding it is so paper dry that it doesn't make the violence shocking, it just makes it seem tone deaf and frankly annoying. Which leads to my second point against Urban Spook, which is substance. It feels like I've seen the Urban Spook story 200 times at this point, besides the main draw to the series, which is the paintings. And to give the series some credit, I think the paintings are genuinely great, and I could tell that they are done by an extremely talented artist. But when the only thing carrying your story is the paintings, then it has some problems, and there's almost nothing going on within the story, as every single episode seems to follow the exact same structure as the other, to the point where it becomes so formulaic that by the end of it, it is close to unwatchable. I can summarize almost every single episode the same way. We get text detailing an over-the-top gruesome murderer, then a painting, then some more info on the killers. That's it. Nothing else going on here. And after a certain point, I feel like the series just gets boring and nothing else. I would have made a whole video talking about why I dislike Urban Spook, but I feel like it's already been done to death at this point. Everyone knows why Urban Spook is bad. And for good reason. The series is not good. But I think what we're seeing in analog horror right now is just so much worse than anything that Urban Spook did. But I know you're probably tired about hearing about Urban Spook, so let's move on to the next part. While I didn't exactly hate Urban Spook, after Urban Spook I did start to worry, as I had seen this start to happen before. I had seen this happen with creepypastas, mascot horror, and the Backrooms, where the first ideas were great and generally intriguing, but each one seemed to just get worse and worse after the other. I think I explained this fear of mine best in my video of what I thought killed the liminal spaces in the Backrooms, where I explained that I think when a genre of horror gets too popular, we see many bad actors come in where they try to write and create things in the same exact veins as the things that are already popular in order to try and get popular themselves. And I expressed this fear as well in my video video on the boiled one because the boiled one also seemed to be falling into those traps that I had been seeing. And I knew when I saw Urban Spook that it was exactly what they were doing from the very beginning, and I knew it was only going to get worse from there, and oh boy, it has. Before we go any further, I'd like to say thank you to all the people that have subscribed to my channel. I can't believe I'm at 900 subs. That's just insane to me. Literally last week I was talking about how excited I was that I had 800 subscribers. Now I'm already at 900, which is insane. And I'm so glad that you guys are liking the content that I'm putting out, and that makes me so happy. And also, if you guys are new to the channel, if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe to the channel. And if you watched the video all the way through, leave a comment down below with your thoughts on the video, but also welcome to the team. And with us hitting 900 subscribers, that just makes me so unbelievably happy, and I'm so glad that we were able to get to this point. Now let's continue with the actual video. Back then, with things starting to get worse, I started to get worried, but Greylock and the man in the suit were also reaching its height, so I started to put my concerns down as me just overreacting. But things just kept getting worse and worse with time. I started seeing more and more analog horror series that got more and more derivative as they continued, and while I will say there are many gems still in the pile, they're getting covered by more and more rocks inside of it. There were some I still had good feelings on, like Piggy Soda's analog horror I felt was a breath of fresh air, because while it didn't change the formula to an extreme degree, I still found the videos to be quite disturbing and intriguing enough to keep me watching. And frankly, the scares were still scary. They weren't just like big spooky faces that would come up and pop up every couple seconds. Then there were some I was more mixed on, with the boiled one being the primary example I have, but I already have a video explaining my thoughts on the boiled one, so if you want to see my opinions on the boiled one, click the link in the description below. Then there were some that weren't great, but you could tell were made from love, which I didn't really take offense with, as I could tell they were trying their hardest. Then there were some that just started getting plain bad, like Void Descendants, which has almost all of the bad details that old creepypastas had, including the hyper-realistic faces and dark backgrounds, as well as reversed music. Like seriously, we're getting to Squidward, Zeus, and Dead Bart tier creepypasta writing here. These videos might have done well in 2010, but in 2024, it doesn't really fit with most of analog horror. It just feels like we're doing creepypastas again with like AI voices. And I still find it funny that we're getting creepypasta tropes in the modern era, instead of just coming up with original creepy ideas. But now they have gotten to the point of just being plain upsetting. While creepypastas just kept getting worse and worse over time, it never got to the point of using the deaths of real life people as a form of shock horror with absolutely no substance behind it. And none upset me more than the SpongeBob analog horror. This right here is just unacceptable and was my breaking point with analog horror, and there's no going around it. No beating around the bush. No. Just no. I don't think creepypastas ever hit this level of low, unless I just have a really bad memory, which I very well could, so if I am, just correct me. This low is just plain wrong. Making a film essentially mocking the death of a real life person is just going way, way too far. No one even wants this, and rightfully I see people getting extreme backlash to this series, but I think we might just have gone too far with everything as a whole. And while I will never support the harassment of creators, I think that he just went too far on this. And in no way in my mind, this was an acceptable thing to do. It just seems to go a little bit too far. I think we need to reel it back a little bit. I think that horror needs to focus more on what makes something scary instead of just trying to shock the audience. And I think analog horror has strayed a little bit too far into the trying to shock the audience category. It's no longer trying to scare me, it's instead trying to shock me and disturb me. I love a lot of analog horror, and I love what it did for the horror genre on YouTube, but I think we need to give it a break before it gets even worse. Because it seems like every single new analog horror series that blows up gets more and more derivative than the last, and is falling into the same traps that creepypasta and mascot horror fell into. There's a reason that each new analog horror series seems to be getting more and more backlash, and because each one is just getting worse and worse, and then using their death of a real life people in order to be spooky is absolutely going too far. And because of that, I think I am done with new analog horror series for now, as unless there is an actually good series that comes out, then I am done with it. And unless we see something truly game-changing, I don't see myself watching more of these, unless there's something like in the past that was really good that I missed out on. And I don't really find myself comfortable with covering this type of horror if they're going to be doing shocking things like this for no reason and seemingly mocking the death of the creator. And with a lot of new series, we are literally falling falling into the exact same tropes that we saw with creepypastas, and I'm just kind of tired of it, as we're getting back to the same old tropes of the hyper-realistic blood and creepy faces being used constantly. I might come back to it at some point, but for now I'm giving Analog Horror a break. I might still cover some older series that I think that are still worth covering, but I don't think I know if I feel comfortable associating myself with a group that thinks mocking the deaths of the creator is okay. And that's the end of the video, and if you liked it, remember to let me know down below, and I'll see you guys all next week.